Hello there folks, my name is Spoonks and welcome back to another episode of Box Office Chat. This is the show where I break down the top 5 domestic box office results, see where each movie landed, and see how well each movie did, so let's get started. Number 5 was Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, making $8 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $357 million and a worldwide total of $642 million. So Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is now officially the biggest movie of the summer movie season. This is certainly a nice little surprise. I certainly, especially at the beginning of the summer, was not expecting this to happen, but it just shows you how strong of a movie this is. The fact that it's held this well, the fact that it's pretty much slaughtered all of its competition, and the legs on it were great. Everyone has really enjoyed this movie, and it now not only the biggest movie of the summer, but the second biggest movie of the year domestically behind the Super Mario Brothers movie, which means the top 2 biggest movies of the year domestically at least are animated films. Of course, this is bound to change, especially with all the other big major movies coming out for the rest of the year, but this is still a major win for the medium of animation. The fact that the 2 biggest movies of the year are animated films, it shows the power not only of these movies that they had over audiences, but the power of animation as well. In terms of worldwide numbers, it is about to surpass the $650 million milestone, and I believe it has a shot of getting close to or maybe even surpassing the $700 million milestone worldwide, as is with the $400 million milestone domestically, given where it's at currently. Of course, this movie can get hurt by the big competition in the coming weeks, so we'll see how those movies affect this, but otherwise, this movie made all the money it needs to, and if this is one of, if not the last time we see it in the top 5, it had one hell of a run. The fact that this sequel to this beloved yet not really big hit back in 2018. Let me remind you, folks, this movie, the first movie, made only like around $390 million worldwide. The jump this movie had over that film is insane, and it once again shows the love that this movie and this franchise has now reached in terms of quality and now box office wise. So yeah, great job, Spider-Verse. You are now officially the biggest movie of the summer. I have nothing else to say except job well done. Number 4 was Elemental, making $10 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $109 million and a worldwide total of $252 million. So this was another terrific week for this movie. It actually dropped just 17% from the previous weekend, which is absolutely incredible. The fact that this movie is dropping as small and holding as well as it has, especially after that first weekend. This movie has just been a juggernaut in that sense, and because of that, it has now officially surpassed the $100 million milestone domestically and is now the 3rd animated film to do so. It is now just roughly $9 million away from surpassing the entire domestic total of Lightyear from last year. Thank God, it will no longer be the lowest grossing Pixar film, and given where it's going, I think it has enough to surpass even The Good Dinosaur domestically as well. Worldwide, it has already surpassed the worldwide total of Lightyear, which is great. We'll see if it can surpass the over $300 million milestone of The Good Dinosaur. It just recently opened in the UK and I believe in Spain, and it still has yet to open in Japan, so we'll see how those totals help the movie get to where it needs to, as once again, this movie has just been crushing it, and because of that, it is also now officially surpassed its initial production budget of $200 million, and I think $300 million is definitely in the bag given where it's at worldwide. Again, budget for this way too expensive, but at the very least, it was able to make that back. We'll see if, maybe Japan helps this movie out, get to, at the very least, the doubling doubling point. I mean, if Transformers could get to the doubling point, I could hope for Elemental. But back to the holds, I think this movie's still gonna hold very well. Again, Ruby Gillman is not doing anything to affect this movie at all, and the next major animated movie isn't out for another couple weeks, that being Ninja Turtles. So we'll see how it holds. It will be interesting to see how it does next weekend when Barbie comes out. That's going to be interesting. But otherwise, this movie has just become the big underdog of the box office right now. While it's still suffering from its ridiculously high budget, it is showing how strong of a movie it is and how it's really resonating with audiences. Word of mouth has just been really doing this movie a lot of favors. And yeah, once again, kind of the big underdog at the box office right now. Number 3 was Sound of Freedom, opening with 19 million this weekend. And since it opened on the 4th of July, that adds to a domestic total of 41 million. And that total stays the same worldwide as it hasn't been released in any international countries yet. So this sort of came out of nowhere. I never heard of this movie until like a couple days ago. I didn't see a trailer, a poster, nothing for this movie. But it kind of shifted the box office in a pretty unexpected way. I thought for sure something like Joyride or maybe even, No Hard Feelings or Transformers would hold and stick around in the top 5. But no, this movie completely caught everyone off by surprise. It's a movie about child sex trafficking by a faith-based studio, and it's been really resonating with people. It got an A+ cinema score rating, which is great and wonderful, and it's been doing very well recently, of course. This movie was able to be successful mostly through word of mouth, as well as this sort of interesting little way of getting tickets for free. You could go to the website and pay for someone else's ticket and they would claim your ticket. Very interesting read there. But the best thing about this movie's opening weekend is the fact that this movie is really cheap to make. It only costed $14.5 million and it's already made well over $40 million domestically. So it's already in the clear. This movie is already a huge financial success, even if it has a rather steep drop next weekend, which is probably very likely. We've got a big movie coming out this weekend that's probably going to steal a lot of this movie's attention. But even if that happens, this movie has already made it all the money it needed to either way. So yeah, this is the completely unexpected big box office surprise of the weekend. It completely caught me off guard. We'll see where it goes from here, but yeah, this movie is already a huge hit nonetheless. Number 2 was Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, making $27 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $122 million and a worldwide total of $248 million. So on the plus side, the movie didn't plummet as hard as I thought it would. It's certainly not the disaster that was The Flash, and it actually held a bit better than I thought it would, honestly. Around 57% drop off, which is honestly, given the opening, that's not bad, especially with the reception audiences gave it. This could have been way, way worse. And again, on the plus side, worldwide, it's already surpassed the $200 million milestone. It should surpass $300 million worldwide, which is definitely not a bad number. But the downside here, though, is that this is an Indiana Jones movie, and it is really, really expensive. Last week, I believe I said that the budget was around $300 million. That got a bit updated, as there are reports saying it could be as expensive as $325 to maybe even $350 million. And unfortunately, $248 million worldwide right now isn't going to cut it, especially for an Indiana Jones movie. They were really, really expecting this movie to take off, I believe, due to the nostalgia, due to the name recognition, due to Harrison Ford. I assume they were hoping for a much, much better than what has turned out. I mean, going back to the Sound of Freedom, that movie actually topped Indiana Jones on 4th of July. It was crazy. It was something completely unexpected. And again, this movie has fallen in second place behind a movie that I'm sure many people wouldn't have expected to beat Indiana Jones, but more on that later. And while yes, it did hold relatively well for a big blockbuster, the competition is fierce, especially this weekend. Well, actually, not this weekend, this week, because the movie that we'll talk about later comes out on Wednesday as opposed to Friday. So I do believe this movie is going to hurt Indiana Jones a lot this weekend, but more on that later. So yeah, still, Indiana Jones, while not a complete utter disaster like, again, The Flash, this is still nowhere it should be right now. It's looking to be another big box office disappointments of the summer. And finally, let's end the video off with the #1 movie of the weekend, which was Insidious: The Red Door, opening with $33 million this weekend domestically and $64 million worldwide. So in terms of the summer movie season, this is the 8th biggest opening weekend of the summer, topping Elemental and Sound of Freedom, but it still sits behind The Flash, Indiana Jones, Transformers, Fast X, The Little Mermaid, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. In terms of the horror genre this year, it's the 2nd biggest opening weekend of the year, topping Megan, Evil Dead Rise, and The Boogeyman, but it still sits behind Scream 6. And in terms of the Insidious franchise, it is the 2nd biggest opening weekend of the franchise behind Insidious Chapter 2, but it topped Insidious: The Last Key, Insidious Chapter 3, and the first Insidious film. So I had high hopes for this movie this weekend, but this honestly exceeded even my high expectations for this movie. I was not expecting this movie to top, of all things, Megan for the 2nd biggest opening of the year for a horror film, and certainly what's even more surprising is that it made enough to top Indiana Jones in the 2nd weekend, which if you told me that would be the case this summer earlier this year, I would have called you crazy, yet here we are. It goes to show you how, once again, it's been such a great year for horror. People love getting scared and watching these movies at the theaters. It shows the power of the Insidious franchise, how it's become this big franchise in the horror genre. People are turning out to see this movie, and the great thing about this opening is the fact that this is a relatively cheap movie to make. It only costed $16 million, and it's made well over that, both domestically and worldwide. It's definitely going to surpass $100 million worldwide. We'll see how it does for the rest of the summer, as audiences aren't too kind on this movie. It got a C+ on CinemaScore, which is the lowest score any Insidious film has gotten. So we'll see how this movie fares in its weekend holds or drops. But even if so, this movie, once again, made all the money it really needed to, and it's already a huge hit as it is. So even if it does have a big drop off next weekend, it probably won't hurt the movie all that much. So yeah, overall, a pretty surprisingly great opening and a #1 spot stealer for Insidious: The Red Door. I'm shocked. I'm impressed, honestly. And those were your top 5 domestic box office results for this weekend, but we're not quite done yet, as we've got another week ahead of us and new movies hitting theaters. And this weekend we have one new major wide release, that film being Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. God, that's a mouthful. Anyways, this is the next installment of the ongoing Mission Impossible franchise, and if I'm going to be honest, I think we're going to see a very impressive, solid opening with this. Tom Cruise has gotten some goodwill over the huge phenomenon that was Top Gun Maverick last year, and I think that's going to carry over to this movie and the Mission Impossible franchise. With each new movie, they keep making more and more than the last, and this certainly looks like no exception. I think a lot of buzz is very strong here. There's a lot of interest. People are really talking about this movie. The marketing has been fantastic. I've been seeing a lot of promos and stuff for it. And considering how a lot of the big blockbusters have disappointed this summer, this looks like it's going to be the one that really impresses and solidifies itself as the big summer movie this year. Hell, the reviews are outstanding right now, as the last I checked, this film has a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is incredible, especially for a blockbuster in this current summer movie season. So yeah, I have a lot of high expectations for this movie. I think it's gonna crush it this weekend, but we'll see how well this movie truly does, as well as the rest of the movies that land in the top 5 on the next Box Office Chat. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of Box Office Chat. What did you all think of the results? Were you satisfied, unsatisfied? Comment down below and let me know. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you like this channel, hit the subscribe button. Follow me on all the social media links right there. And until next time, everyone, stay sharp.